Good evening. I'm Mark Carbonell, Managing Director of the Midwest Minority Think Tank Foundation, and I want to invite you to join us for tonight's Brother to Brother Talk, a solution driven dialogue where we cover issues and concerns of the Black community and society at large, but also uh, filled with solutions. We're not going to just dive into or delve into the problems that surround our community without providing a solution. In fact, the Midwest Minority Think Tank Foundation takes a mute stance rather, on situations where we have not come up with a solution. Now, you may not accept our solution, you may not appreciate our solution, you may not even want to invoke our solution, but you will never be able to say that there was no solution, even if it's rejected. We spend our time analyzing and looking into situations and concerns that govern us and surround us, often without being able to provide those who oppose us or that which oppress us with options. And you can't expect the ones that are causing many of the conflicts that we have to then offer uh, you this way out if they are benefiting and profiting from your dilemma. And that goes personally as well as for the full community. That in order for us to really find our way to a successful state as a total community, we must offer the solution. We have the resources within us. We have the collective genius within us. We to make the difference, and it is now time that we begin to set forth the solutions rather than concentrate our efforts on merely what the problems are and the disparaging differences. The differences that we have, we need to look and examine the problem for the solution. For wherever there is a challenge, we can overcome that challenge. And we find that overcoming the challenge is not nearly as difficult as it may appear sometimes, because if we allow the challenge or the problem to blind us from our concentration on the solution, then we miss an opportunity. And this is where we are now. We cannot afford at this point in the history of our people, in unprecedented times, so many things are coming against us at this point. Not only our community, but the society at whole. We cannot afford to allow ourselves to drift into the dilemma of issues without having a voice that says, here are the solutions that will remedy the conundrum where we are facing. And the Midwest Minority Think Tank Foundation works to bring about those solutions. And we look for various ways and various means to get the solutions out on whatever the issues may be. We will cover many issues over the next few weeks. Of course, police brutality is at the top of the list right now. Black reparation is coming forth, wealth redistribution, and of course, the research that we've done on COVID-19, domestic violence. We need to examine the political impact on the Black community 21st century, and criminal justice reform, just to name uh, on those topics among many others that we will cover. Also, the Midwest Minority Think Tank. Let me take a moment to share with you that we are working on a series. We completed uh, the first three installments of a series called "The 21st Century Black America Renaissance: Energizing and Reclaiming the People." And you can see those episodes on our YouTube channel. Let's go to YouTube, Mark Olds, Markolds, YouTube Mark Olds, that channel, and you can uh, view that series. Also, we each Saturday morning at 9 we release a video called Black Thinkers, Black Thinker series, and the Black Thinker series as well offers solutions, and that's where we have to place our focus on the solution, and that's why we said that uh, the brother to brother talk is a solution driven dialogue, because we are looking forward to uh, finding the solutions and presenting the solution. If it works in your community, embrace it. If it works in your household, embrace it. And if you need to take it to someone else, feel free to do so. Welcome back, and once again, we're introducing solutions on Brother to Brother Talk, and we're talking about the Black Thinker series, where we uh, look forward to putting forth solutions whenever we have an opportunity to share, engage in platform discussion and dialogue. We feel that across the length and breadth of this nation, there are many individuals who have not had an opportunity to express themselves, or are overlooked, and many times left out of the decision making process and never included. Uh, have great knowledge and reference, historical reference to what is taking place within our community, and have never been given an opportunity to speak what they feel are solutions, and they're closest to the problem. And many times, the people who are in academia and the people who are in political positions are not directly connected to the people who are experiencing the most difficult time, the most difficult period. And so when that it takes place, we find ourselves uh, omitting a great resource, a great uh, potential to remedy the conundrum that plague us often, because the solutions are being overlooked. We have a stereotypical attitude toward where the solution should come from. I often use the analogy that if I'm if I'm in a situation where I'm drowning in the swimming pool, don't waste time asking me why was I in the deep end of the pool, knowing that I cannot swim. We can discuss that after you get me out. And so let's look at how can we get the solutions out, so that those who are in position can see and reference what it is that the people are experiencing, and the way the people feel about a circumstance or a situation. And from there, we can then have a broader view of solutions and opportunities to implement that which will bring about the positive change that we all so often hear, that people are waiting to join in and be a part of the change, the positive change, the solution that we seek and that we need. And so that's part of where we are, and what it is that we're looking to accomplish through brother to brother dialogue. Uh, I'm going to be joined tonight, one of our correspondents from the Midwest, Charles Traylor, who's the uh, founder of the Ohio uh, Violence Prevention Academy.com. And after we have a moment here, just take a moment, just for a moment, I want to share with you uh, the book, Not Without Scars, my latest work. Not Without Scars is captures 20 years of struggle, where we have to find our way sometimes. Quite often, we find ourselves trapped in a situation that we have to continue and not give up. And in terms of not giving up, we have to continue to press forward, whether it's by faith, our strength, our courage, and our stamina. Not Without Scars available on Amazon.com. It captures what I've been going through for the last 20 years. And sometimes things don't have a fairy tale ending. And so we have to keep going forward day to day, looking for victory and how we can make it one day at a time.
How do I write my life story? I know hurt and pain. I don't like either one, whether physical or emotional. Herein contains my story, Not Without Scars, Part 2. Optimism, perseverance, persistence, resilience. 2 decades of personal struggle. Optimism. I faced a new millennium with hopefulness. Perseverance. My ego, my humble beginnings, my desire to achieve never allow me to turn away from a difficult task. Persistence. Opposition should be anticipated as an effective strategy to victory surfaces. Resilience. Difficulties do not automatically spell termination. Scars reveal my imperfection as reminders of past episodes of pain, sorrow, or triumph. Scars can tell beautiful story endings or relay misery that wishes to remain anonymous. This work is meant to help others who have experienced decades of struggle. When struggles appear to never end, you must get through the night and face the challenge of a new dawn with fresh hope.
Welcome back, and I'm joined now with Charles Traylor. And Charles, delighted to have you with us tonight to be a part of the brother to brother talk, the solution driven dialogue. And uh, Charles has a great story, great time in the field as a change agent. He's not new to the struggle, and as it turns out, he has founded an organization that is appealing to us right now, and very much needed, not only in the Ohio Midwest area, but also that can be replicated across the country. Charles, welcome to Brother Talk.
Hey, good morning. Good evening, Mark. How you doing, man? This West Coast time.
Well, when you're on location, that you have to. So I know that the time travel and the changing the time zone sometimes throws us off. Just give us a brief background on the
Sure,
Ohio Violence Prevention Academy.
sure. Several years ago, there was a group of men from Oakland, California. They appeared on Oprah Winfrey's show, and it was called the Oakland Men Project, and it was a project of violence prevention where they saw that in the projects of Oakland, California, that the men primarily were preying on the community. They were using the single mom homes for drug houses. They were, making babies and not taking care of them. They were really just predators in the community. And so Oakland Men's Project started um, working with the men and the women in that community, and they turned the community around. Well, the director of the Ohio um, um, Alcohol and Drug Agency saw that, and so 100 people, including myself, were trained in this violence prevention model, and it was designed for people to take a journey within themselves to recognize areas where they have been perpetrating violence, either through physical, means, verbal means, or just an attitude. Um, and so, as a man, um, we all had to look at ourselves and realize that, yeah, I never put my hands on a woman, but I sat around and listened to men, make comments about women and then speak up, for those women. I sat around and laughed at jokes, that men have said about women, and all that's part of violence. And so I began to be a trainer in that model, and I started the Ohio Violence Prevention Academy because I want to see all men respect women and to take a journey within themselves to stop the violence that we perpetuate on on our women and our children, and most of the children by neglect. That's a form of violence. And so I
Well,
started the Violence Prevention Academy. Go ahead.
no, no, no. I was just listening to you. And the thought was, when we talk about bringing our children uh, into an environment where they can learn to coexist with one another, male and
Hmm.
female, and build the extended family. And we've gotten away from that. To hold that thought just for a moment, Charles.
Sure.
We're joined now also by uh, Ben Frazier, the president of the Northside Coalition from Jacksonville, Florida, our Southeast correspondent. Good evening, Ben.
Good evening. It is indeed a great pleasure to join this auspicious panel to discuss, obviously, very serious issues. And what we're really talking about is the survival of a people. We're talking about our existence. So, obviously, I feel, as I'm sure each of you do, that this is an extremely weighty matter that requires some serious heavy lifting to go on. Uh, I was listening about the comments that Charles was making with regard to violence and the need to stop the violence. We all say that wherever we live, regardless of the jurisdiction, regardless of the municipality, we all have been saying for years, stop the violence. But we've got to start that mantra at home. We need to
Absolutely,
stop the
absolutely.
violence and increase the peace at the house where you bring the bacon home. So we got a couple of issues here to get over. And I think the overarching issue is going to be something that is a bit of a white elephant that sometimes we don't really want to discuss. As Black activists, we are willing to point out the failures of the system, but we'd rather not look in the mirror. The bottom line here is, in the words of Michael Jackson, if you want to make the world a better place, you got to start by looking in the mirror. So the overarching question I think that we should discuss is this relationship between Black men and Black women.
That's actually that's a magnificent start there. We're also joined by our Mid-Atlantic correspondent Ron Yates, and we're going to bring Ron into the conversation right now and let him make his opening statement. Ron, how are you this evening?
I'm doing well, thank you. How about yourself?
We're great. We're great. What we're doing, we're taking a general stab at the violence that we're experiencing in our community. And so let's have your take on that, and then we'll get into some of the dialogue that's prevalent in other areas.
Well, obviously, the level of violence in the Black community is to put it frankly, it's out of control. When we do it to each other, or when it's done by others, being the police organizations around the country or others. But the only one that can address those issues is us. We're the only ones who are capable of reining in violence in our community and also protecting our community. It is incumbent upon us to do those things. It is no one's job but ours. And I think that, what I find interesting is that, we talk about violence now, we talk about looting and burning and how destructive it is. But, someone pointed out, where did we, meaning Black people, where did we learn rioting? Where did we learn to do that? That was something that was done to us, right? We all know the story of Black Wall Street. We know the story of Rosewood and so many other thriving Black communities that were doing much better than the surrounding white communities. And so any excuse they could find to attack these areas, they did so. And I think in Tulsa alone, in one day, 300 Black people were killed. So now you see situations where they're talking about, well, stores are being looted and, there is some level of violence. Now, I don't advocate violence at all, but when violence was committed against us, where was the protest? Where was the public outcry? Where's the public outcry for Breonna Taylor? Where's the public outcry for Ahmaud Arbery? So, I think that we need as Black men to be on the forefront of dealing with issues in the Black community. It is our community and it is our responsibility. We should not rely on anyone else to come in to teach our children, to teach them right from wrong, to teach them values and morals. That's our responsibility. And unfortunately, we've fallen down on it. And in many cases, what you find in the Black community, you find a lot of women who are active in the community, who are stepping in to fill that void that has been created by us stepping away.
That's true. That's true in many instances, Ron. And we're going to look at what we're doing in each of our various areas. And I'm going to come back to Ben. And Ben, tell us a little bit about what the Northside Coalition is doing in Jacksonville, and what are you seeing in your travels around the country?
Well, the Northside Coalition of Jacksonville is a civil rights organization. Our mission is to stand up and to speak out against any and all forms of social, racial, or economic injustice. But as activists, we recognize that while each and every one of us has to deal with its own amount of discipline, our own amount of responsibility, and that each of us as individuals must be held accountable for our own actions and choices. We don't give society a free pass with regard to the obligation that they have or the problems that they have put on our shoulders. We cannot ignore the fact that in addition to putting a knee on the back of the neck of George Floyd, that this country has had its knee on the neck of Black people for over 400 years. In other words, we cannot dismiss the systems that are in place that causes the problems within our community. And as it relates to violence, we recognize that our premise and our argument is built on this one suggestion.
Right.
And that is, if I could just finish my point.
Yes, go ahead.
In fact, a direct connection, an inextricable link, if you will, between poverty, unemployment, economic degradation, gun violence, and crime. We cannot ignore that. That so many of our supposed answers are not really answers. They're simply band-aids. They're being placed over an open and hemorrhaging wound, which is why so many of these plans to stop the violence are not working.
Well, that's excellent, man, and I appreciate that perspective from Ben. I'm gonna come back to Charles, but in just a moment, I would like to put up a chart. I want to put up a chart that since 2015, the police have killed over 5,400 people, shot and killed over 5,400 people. You can see on the chart, it was 994 in 2015, and it has continued along that pace. And last year it was 1,004, and as of June of 7th of this year, already 463 people were killed by the police. We're not saying that violence doesn't exist in all other areas related to our community. We're just simply asking, how can you stop this one particular institution that is supposed to protect and serve from what they're doing? And I'd like to hear your perspective on it, Charles, and then followed by you, Ron, and then we'll move into some proposed solution that we can discuss.
Sure. One of the things that that I subscribe to is that we have to get away from what I consider a beggar mentality. We should stop begging people to do for us what we should be doing for ourselves. To me, the solution to uplifting, Black people and our Black community is for the Black family to be put back together. The Black family was dismantled, as a strategy to destroy, Black people.
That's right.
And when you look at the Black family, that's where everything has to start. We have to start, bringing the Black family, back together, because we can't expect our open and historic enemy to solve our problems. It's not in their best interest to do anything to help, Black people. And so with regard to police, killings, the thing that's always missed in discussions about what to do about crime and violence, we have to first look in the mirror and admit, as Black men, we have failed our families, we have failed our community, we failed our children, we failed our women. We're the only men in this country that can't protect their family, and something's wrong with that. That paradigm, we have to have a whole paradigm shift in the way we think as men. There was a time when Black men did protect their family. Black men tried to protect their families in slavery, but they had no protection, for our family, because they would get killed. But we just don't protect our community. We're allowing our children to grow up. Our young boys grow up in the wilderness. We know they're out there doing things they should be doing, but we turn our backs on them, and we have to bring the Black family back together. I don't have a whole lot of patience for, and there's something good about marching, protesting, kneeling. I mean, all of that. I don't knock it at all, but for me, it's all about action. And the action we have to take is to look in the mirror first and see, what is it I'm doing? What can I do? What more can I do? What have I contributed to the problem, and what can I contribute to the solution?
All right, that's outstanding. Ron, what chime in, Ron?
Well, I think that the problem with our relationship with the police, and not just the police, but with law enforcement, and also not just law enforcement, but with the white community, we have not protected ourselves. And in this country, if you are not willing or able to protect yourself, then you become a victim. And we have been victimized for 400 years because we were not either prepared or able to protect ourselves. Now, I don't want to use the term able, because we always had the ability to protect ourselves. We just have elected not to. We relied on the system. We thought that the system would protect us. That's what Dr. King was advocating for in the 50s and 60s. He wanted the government to live out his creed, which says under the 14th Amendment that you have equal protection under the law. That has never applied to us. And now you juxtapose that with Malcolm X. Malcolm X, his approach was simply by any means necessary. You noticed when Malcolm X was with the Nation of Islam, and even when he left and formed his own organization, well, the police weren't pulling Malcolm X over and snatching him out of his car. In fact, they weren't doing that with the brothers of the Nation of Islam at all, because these brothers were prepared to protect themselves, as Malcolm said, by any means necessary. Now, here in Northeast Pennsylvania, we have formed a gun club under the auspices of NAGA, NAGA being the National African American Gun Association. So we formed a chapter, in fact, 2 chapters up here in this area, and we are training with handguns. For those of us, I myself, having been a background in law enforcement, I, of course, am familiar with handguns and, being in the military with, long guns, assault rifles. But for those of us who are not, we're training people to be familiar with handguns, long guns, learning some basic tactics on how to protect yourself, because the government will never protect you. It's not their role to protect you. You have to be able and willing to protect yourselves. And, if you look down in the segregated South, for the most part, the night riders, the Klansmen, whoever would come into the Black community and terrorize them. Well, when groups like Deacons for Defense showed up, they thought twice about running up in these neighborhoods and wreaking havoc. And when you show a willingness to protect yourselves, and you show that you have the same weaponry that they have, they think twice about using force against you, because now apply equal force.
Okay. Well, we have that overview from our correspondents we have with us tonight. From the Southeast correspondent Ben Frazier from Jacksonville, Florida, and from the Mid-Atlantic states we have Ron Yates, and from the Midwest we have Charles Traylor. What we have is a microcosm of what men are feeling across the length and breadth of this country, and it has to be the solutions are emerging from us. I want to just take a brief pause here, and then we'll come back in a minute, and we're going to start talking about some of those solutions for to end this outbreak of police brutality.
The Great Lockdown of 2020, a mid-crisis analytical report, represents a historical work. The people provide indicators to their needs and roles in building and establishing the new norm. The voice of the people places at the fingertips of decision makers knowledge of how the area's resources should be deployed to best serve the society and address the needs and concerns of the people going forward. This study serves as a guide to where key research should be directed and sets the course to engage resources during crises by future social theoreticians. Comparison of responses on multiple levels provide an uncanny insight. The capture of a population's response in the midst of a crisis compared to a post-crisis reflection shall prove to be of monumental value into human reactions facing uncertainty during and post a calamity.
Welcome back, and we have a great cross section of thoughts being represented here tonight, and what we have to we have a little bit of feedback delay on someone's phone, but anyway, we're gonna get through a little technical difficulty and take a look at the solutions that we can offer as it relates to police brutality. And I propose that we just begin this dialogue. We may not be able to cover all of these tonight, and I'm going to leave the forum open as we go through each one, and we just chime in. I think that one of the major issues that we find is that the police union, the president of the police union, has more power than the mayor or the police chief. And as a result, if someone, many times we hear that, oh, he was placed on administrative leave or he was fired, and then a year, 6 months, or whatever that time frame might be, he's given back pay and reinstated to his job. So the police union has so much power that's an issue. Second, maybe we need a uniform federal funding for police. Just like if you work for the government, you're a GS-12 or GS-15, regardless of where you are, everybody gets paid that same salary. So maybe that might work toward a solution. Third, maybe the police chief should be an elected official so that the people have more input into who is leading their police force, as opposed to it just being a political appointed position. And then perhaps we may need to replace the municipal police force with the county sheriff, because the county sheriff is an elected official. And the fifth is remove the prosecutorial immunity. And finally, let's discuss what is currently on the horizon to fund the police. Let's start with the first one, the disillusionment of the police union. Chime in, whoever has the first thought on that.
Well, I'll step up. One thing that, on my radio show, we discussed this last year about the police union, and it was brought up that if the military don't have a union, why is it that the police have to have a union? And that was a very good question. I never thought about that. But when you think about it, the police union really only serves the purpose to protect police officers from being prosecuted for their crimes. And that's why you had that qualified immunity. And that has to go. You're absolutely right. The police union wields more power than the police chief, the mayor. Right here in Columbus, Ohio, we're going through a battle about reforming the police, and the police union is bullying the mayor and the city council into backing away from the reforms that they talked about during the protest over all of the killings of Black folks. And so, yeah, I agree. The police union needs to be dissolved because it really is not necessary to have a police union.
Is it up?
The military don't have one.
Ben or Ron?
Well, allow me to say I recognize that the Fraternal Order of Police is probably one of the most racist organizations in America today. They represent people who are attempting to cover up and hide. But in Jacksonville, Florida, for example, we have the same people investigating themselves, internal investigations, which are always questionable, always controversial. We've got the fox guarding the hen house. Black guy gets shot on the east side, and they're talking about investigating. How are you going to investigate the same guy you go bowling with, the same guy you putting burgers and hot dogs with on the grill? We don't trust the Fraternal Order of Police as far as we can shout. We recognize that they're there, just as the gentleman said, to serve and protect these other folks. I think that there are major issues, especially when you consider their endorsement of political candidates, because with their power, their financial power, they can actually serve to politically neuter Black candidates who can't get their money or don't have money to run, or they're faced with running against somebody who is funded and endorsed by the FOP. It's ugly. What they do is ugly.
Yes, I understand this.
Ron?
Yeah, as I said, I have a law enforcement background. I'm a retired police officer. And in actuality, the police do not have qualified immunity.
Something happened.
Sorry, we lost Ron. Maybe when he comes back in, we can pick
We
that.
lost him after he made such a heavy statement that the police don't have qualified immunity. I don't know what book you read that in.
That's
We'll come back to that. My second point is that is the federal government has grades. If you can be in the military in Montana, or the military in South Dakota, or the military in Alabama, if you're a GS1 or E5, you have the same rate of pay. And perhaps if we took away the scales from city to city, and it was only in the funding would go towards salaries instead of giving SWAT equipment and military equipment, then perhaps we could get some changes made to the way that the communities are being policed. That's just one thought. And the other thought is, what if the police chief became an elected official? I think we have Ron back with I'm gonna let him finish his statement, and then we can move into those other two areas. Ron, we have you back.
Yeah, I had a couple of technical difficulties. Anyway, the police do not have qualified immunity. Prosecutors have that. What police officers have is indemnification. So you're indemnified if you go out and you use deadly physical force. If they were to, well, basically what happens is if you go out and you shoot someone, you're protected by the police union and also by the municipality. If people were allowed to sue the individual officer personally, then that would definitely have an effect on the level of force you use against someone. If you knew that pulling out your gun is going to cost you your job, your home, and everything you work for, you think twice about doing that. But as it stands right now, that's not the case. They are protected, as I said, by the union and also by the municipality. So what really protects police officers, bad police officers, is the system. Because let's be realistic. If you go to the supermarket, you know who the bad checkout person is, and the people who work with them know that. If you work on a railroad, you know who the lazy people are on the railroad and the people who aren't doing their job properly. Well, everybody in the individual precincts know who are the so-called bad apples, as Trump refers to them, but they are protected by the system. So for the prosecutors, they can charge you and they don't have to worry because they are completely and entirely immune from prosecution. So they can knowingly prosecute you, knowing there's no evidence, knowing that they shouldn't even be investigating you. But they know that because they have absolute immunity, they can do whatever they choose. And because the police officers work for the prosecution, there's a relationship between these two organizations, and one protects the other.
Well,
Absolutely. Let me make this statement, Charles, before we go. The reason that I raised as a possible solution to removing the immunity that prosecutors had, you can impeach a president of the United States, you can impeach a federal judge, but you cannot impeach a local prosecutor who, as Ron stated, can withhold evidence or make bogus charges. Now, if we had time to explore that, if that person got the same time, if he was found guilty of that, that he gave someone on a false accusation, uh, again, the person may think twice about that. So, taking away that blanket immunity that the prosecutors have would force them to do their investigation, because the county sheriff is an arm of a district attorney, a prosecutor, solicitor, whatever you may call him in the local jurisdiction. We have a lot that has to be invoked here that goes toward stop you from killing me and prosecuting me viciously without any accountability or any repercussion. I believe one of you were about to make a statement. I think it was Charles.
Yeah, yes. Just a few years ago, police here in Columbus, Ohio, shot and killed a young man. And just this past week, a judge in Ohio, in Columbus, Ohio, ruled that in a wrongful death case, that the police officers could not use qualified immunity. You know, it didn't apply in this wrongful death lawsuit, and the judge ruled that the police officers were liable, you know, for killing that man, and the judge cited that qualified immunity was not a defense that the police officers could use. Also, the other issue is that the prosecutors, you know, the jury, see, the grand jury is the real key, you know, as well when it comes to police, you know, being, you know, charged with murder or some sort of, you know, violent abuse of somebody's rights, because the way the prosecutor presents the evidence to the grand jury has a lot to do with why here in Columbus, Ohio, 100% of the police shootings are always, you know, ruled as being good shootings. And we know that there's no such thing as perfection. So, you know, the grand juries have to be dealt with as well in the way that evidence is presented. The evidence is presented to protect the police and not the victim.
Ben?
Well,
Essentially,
as I said, the police work for the prosecution. There is a relationship between the two organizations. They work together on a daily basis. And, you know, when you go before a grand jury, only the prosecutor is permitted into the jury room. Actually, the person he's attempting to indict, he or she is attempting to indict, they can be in the grand jury room and they can have their attorney, but they cannot speak. They can only sit there, can't even ask a question. They can only sit there and listen. This is run by the prosecution. So there is an adage in this country: you can indict a ham sandwich. It's simple because there's only the prosecutor who's presenting the evidence, and how he presents that evidence generally determines the outcome. If you want to indict someone, you can, because they have no defense there.
I think that there's something that we should address squarely here, gentlemen, and that is the role that racism plays in all of this. Racism is, in fact, a persistent feature of the criminal justice system. We all know that police, judges, prosecutors all tend to look and treat Black people differently when they come into contact with them, not because of the content of their character, but because of the color of their skin. There's rampant racism in this system. I think that we should be talking about how do we address this bias in the criminal justice system? How do we address it? How do we deal with it? Because we already know that mistreatments, even white folks agree that in surveys taken, that Black people get treated unfairly by police and all the surveys. So how do we deal with that? We talking around it, But I want you to recognize that there's a need for us to talk about the role of white supremacy, racism, discrimination plays in all of this. No, I don't think, by the way, that marching is going to be our answer. But there are three key words that I think we cannot overlook. I don't think the tactics and the strategies that we come up with will result in all one thing or all the other. But I think that they will encapsulate and encompass three words. And those three words have to do with agitate, educate, organize. We've got to do all three of those.
Well, I concur with that, Ben. The protest or the demonstration or the agitation or the creative tension, we need to approach whoever we are directing our energy with the solution of who can resolve the issue.
Yeah.
To just protest and agitate without any potential solution, we can't expect the person that we direct our energy toward to come up with the solution for. We need to march with the solution. We need to agitate with the document that says this is what we want and this is what we demand. And so I think that we have to move in that direction in order for us to accomplish the outcome that we need to.
Yes. We must be solution oriented. I agree with that wholeheartedly. But in the words of Frederick Douglass, we must also make a demand. Because why? Power concedes nothing without a demand. It never has, it never will. We have to press this country, this system, to do what it says it's supposed to do. We can't just stop and say, well, they're not doing it and they're not going to do it and give them a hall pass. No, we're not going to do that. We're going to continue to press this country to live up to its obligation and what is written in the Constitution of the United States, whether white folks decide to deliver it to us on a silver platter or whether they're going to continue to turn their backs on us. We must continue to educate, to agitate, and to organize our people.
I think that there is a blueprint for what we must do. And there are, I think it's about 90 some odd families in Georgia. Matter of fact, no, not that many. There is 19 families in Georgia that bought about 97 acres of land. Land that is theirs, land that they're going to use for living, for producing food for themselves, and land that they can protect that is theirs. We in this country have been advocating and we have been trying to negotiate with the government for, hundreds of years, and we've gotten nowhere. If you're familiar with Louis Farrakhan and his teacher, Elijah Muhammad, or the most honorable Elijah Muhammad, he said one thing you cannot do is reform the devil, right? You can talk to you blue in the face, but the devil is the devil, and the devil's not going to give you anything. What you're going to have to do is you're going to have to take it. And that is what Europeans have done, not just here, but throughout the entire planet. Everywhere they've gone, they have taken. They don't sit down and negotiate. They didn't come to Africa and negotiate for slaves or for Africans. They took them. They didn't come to this country. Columbus didn't negotiate with the native peoples in this country. They took it. When the 13 colonies were established and they wanted to go west, they didn't negotiate with the native groups that were living in the center part of this country and on the west coast. They killed them and they took the land. And right now, when you're dealing with not all Europeans, but you see that when they want to address an issue, they show up with assault rifles. In Michigan, they wanted to open up the economy of Michigan. They didn't go there, looking to negotiate with the governor. They went there with their assault rifles and they went in to the state house and they made their demand known. So for us, we're not going to be able to negotiate or legislate. We have to establish our own, because when Europeans come, they establish their own and they separate themselves from everybody else. They ended up in South Africa. Are they Africans? They ended up in South Africa and they set up the apartheid system. They went into Palestine, took Palestine and set up an apartheid system. So the Palestinians are living out on a sliver of land, and Israel comprises the rest of the land. So if we in this country ever want to have freedom, economic, political, social, we have to have our own. Going to the government, it's great, but where have we gotten in going to the government? Dr. King made some excellent strides, but 50 years later, everything Dr. King fought so hard for is being taken back. Aren't they gerrymandering? Aren't they purging voter rolls? Isn't that what we fought for? The right to vote? And now they're telling you can't even mail in a ballot anymore. So we need to establish our own businesses, like we did in the Black Wall Street, like we did in Rosewood and other communities around the country. We need to do the same thing again.
Well, that's certainly opened up the point of view, and it also verifies why we're having this program. That's why it's called Brother to Brother Talk, so that everybody get us a chance to get their views out, and that's what we want to do. We want to hear from the people what it is that you feel is the solution, and so that we're always prepared to bring to you multiple solutions to the issues that are not only just different views, but we also want to have your solution path. And in order for us to arrive at this path of solution, we have to have this dialogue ongoing. And so I know that we're not going to be able to resolve. We didn't get through all the points that we talked about tonight in terms of police reform. One of the things I think, and once again, I want you guys to give me your view from your perspective. Do we need to focus in on one issue and drive a point home on that issue, or do we need to incorporate everything that's going on negative at the same time? In other words, there's a pandemic, COVID pandemic out there, but there's also a poverty pandemic out there.
Let me say this, Mark.
There's a drug epidemic, a pandemic out there. I've never, in all my years of travel and living, I never met a heroin addict or a cocaine addict that owned a plane or a ship. I've never met a person in an urban area that owned a gun factory. And so there's so many things that are external forces. So how do we approach this? Right now, do we approach this situation with the police brutality in this essence of stop killing us, or do we approach it from a political point of reform? How do we sort that out so we can best serve our community and bring forth the solution that the people can get behind?
Mark, Mark, years ago, and this is going to sound, strange, but years ago, one of the leading white racists of this country's history, J. Edgar Hoover, made a very powerful statement when somebody asked him what is the greatest threat to America, and he said the unity of Black people. And that is still the greatest threat to America is the unity of Black people. Whatever we do We have to, the centerpiece of whatever we do, I think, has to be about rebuilding the Black family. If you can rebuild the Black family, you can rebuild the Black community, and the possibilities are endless, from there, because we actually control our destiny. We just have to, we have to know that. People know us better than we know ourselves sometimes. They know our anger and our frustration about what's happening, with our people being killed by the police. They know it has a shelf life, that we will march, we will protest, and for about 30 days, and then after that, we don't have nothing else. After that, we have to, unity, the centerpiece of whatever we do, has to be, you know, rebuilding the Black family. That's just my understanding.
I agree with that.
Yeah,
I think
go ahead.
that unity is the resounding statement that we make here tonight, and that is that we are stronger together. We recognize that the Black body politic is no longer the homogenous entity it once was, but we've got to agree on something, and it is where our missions respectively intersected where we can begin to collaborate. We must never allow them to divide us. We know that that is a part of their strategy, to divide and to conquer. But I have the feeling that despite the challenges that we're up against right now, that still my faith is strong. I must believe that a community and a people can change for the better. Must we change? Yes. Should we hold the mirror and our faces in front of the mirror? Yes. But again, we must also continue to agitate, to educate our people, and to organize our people. I don't see the answer as being all one thing or all the other. But I will tell you this one thing. I will maintain the faith that it will be done and that we will, in the words of James Weldon Johnson, who hails from my hometown, Jacksonville, that we will march on until victory is won.
Ron, give us your
You know,
closing statement.
well, you know what? I think in America there are two things that this country respects: economic power or military. You know, there are a number of nations that the United States views as an enemy, but because that nation has in their possession or in their arsenal nuclear weapons or the potential for nuclear weapons, we ain't running up in there. Or we ran up in Iraq and Afghanistan because they don't have a military. When we went into Vietnam, right, a country that didn't have nuclear weapons, but had a people that were determined, that would fight to the last man, we didn't do so well. So in this country, you have Jewish people. Jewish people represent the economic power. They don't have a military in this country, but they have the economic power. So you don't find police officers running up into synagogues and arresting people. They'll run into our churches, they'll run into our mosques, they'll run into our temples, but you ain't running into a synagogue in this country. And they have amassed enough wealth that they are respected. You don't like the Jews, but you respect them because every politician who runs for office in this country makes a definitive statement that they will protect the state of Israel. They don't say that about any nations in Africa, even though we have been in service for 400 years. They don't make those statements about Africa. So either we're going to amass the economic power where they will respect not us, but the dollars we represent, or we'll have the military power to defend ourselves, one or the other, or a combination of the two.
Well, thank you, gentlemen. I know that we could not possibly cover everything that's happening in the various parts of the country. Uh, of course, I invite you back next Thursday night if you're available. We also have other areas that individuals that will be chiming in. And We haven't finished police brutality. There's so much more that we can dig into about on this particular subject, and as we look to bring forth solutions. So I thank you once again, gentlemen, for being with us tonight. Let me just acknowledge Ben Frazier, who was the president of the Northeast Coalition in Jacksonville, Florida. Ron Yates, from the Middle Atlantic, correspondent from Northeast Pennsylvania and New York, and also uh, Charles Traylor from Columbus, Ohio, and tonight coming to us from Los Angeles. So we thank you for being a part of uh, Brother to Brother Talk tonight. I look forward to seeing you. We're going to end the broadcast, but I would like for my guests to hold on just for a minute when we conclude.